Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Attack the Baseline, a WNBA podcast where every week we attack our baseline knowledge of the WNBA. I'm your host, John Barber, joined as always by my co-host, Kristen Barber. Kristen, how are we doing?
Hello, John. I'm doing good. If you hear any sort of rain behind us, it just started thunderstorming, so we love a little Sunday night cozy thunderstorm. This week, we were Connecticut Sun fans.
Yes.
And I was excited going into this week because I think the Sun were a team that I was considering being a fan of at the beginning of this season. I'm from Connecticut. I have a Connecticut area code. I rep the 203. We'll see if I continue being a Sun fan. After this week.
Let's see what happens. You're gonna have to listen to our little guest spot with listener coach. We'll get into that in a little bit. We've got some news and stuff to talk about. Not a particularly lengthy news week. Kind of more of a bummer of a news week personally, because really the highlight that we're going to go over is some big injuries around the league. To some important players for not only the W, but also for the Olympic team.
Yeah, I mean, it's week 6. People get hurt as we go along. But it does, at this year, it's kind of sucks that now it's taking players away from playing in the Olympics.
Correct. So, without further burying that lead, let's just get right into the news. Also, before I do that, if you're a fan of the show, and you want to let us know how you're feeling, if you're a fan specifically of one of these teams that we have yet to cover, please reach out. Let us know. You can reach us on Twitter if you use that platform. I'm on Twitter at PigeonHat, PIDGEON, hat, and Kristen is also on Twitter.
I think Kristen Barber _
Yeah, she doesn't know it because she doesn't use it. But also send us an email, attackthebaseline@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We've gotten a couple emails, and it's really nice to just hear about some new fans and some long-term fans. So,
yep. And leave a 5-star review on any platform that you are listening to us on.
Yeah, that would go a long way. Okay, so now it's time for the news. The sad stuff. Talking about players who are hurt. The list continues to grow. We literally just got out of watching the Connecticut Sun versus the Seattle Storm game. It's Sunday afternoon while we're recording this. Dewana Bonner had an injury right at the end of the game. We don't know how serious. She was grabbing her thigh. It seemed like an end of game, like, I gotta get out of here. Because unfortunately for the Sun, they got beat, which they're not, is not typical for that team. So maybe it was just a reason to get over to the bench.
Yeah, I don't know. Her knee kind of buckled a little bit, but it didn't look like she was too hurt.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Opposed to the first game of the week that we watched, which was the Sun Sparks game.
Correct.
Where Cameron Brink sadly tore her ACL.
Yes. So Cameron Brink, who is a rookie that was trending potentially towards Rookie of the Year consideration. I mean, the fever is starting to get hot, so it's almost now pretty difficult for me to see anybody other than Caitlin winning Rookie of the Year, but we're still early in the season.
I'd make a case.
And we can make a case, but Cam was playing really good ball on a team that was not so good, looking like a Defensive Player of the Year type candidate with all the things that she could do, and we were excited to see her on this 3-on-3 team for the Olympics, a team that she has played with in the past, that she's had success with, but she tears her ACL. So, and
it looked, to me, it looked really painful. And you can see her, scream as soon as she, fell onto the floor. And the announcers, I guess it was a Sun broadcast, but the announcers, didn't really mention it. No. They were kind of like, oh, Cameron Brink looks like she's a little bit hurt. She's, screaming in pain, has to be carried off the court.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for her.
It was tough. So we witnessed this one firsthand, which is a shame. And then a couple days later, Ryan Howard, who was having a really good season so far in
also,
Atlanta.
on the 3-on-3 team.
On the 3-on-3 team. Goes down with an ankle injury. And as far as we know, no timeline for her to return. Mm-hmm. Which, it's not quite as serious. She can likely come back by the end of the year. Depends if Atlanta will be playing for something. They might be fighting for that 8th spot in the playoff listing. But really a shame, because that's another player you lose for this Olympic team who was going to be really the veteran of that team. Someone that they considered for the 5-on-5 team that ultimately got moved to the 3-on-3 team. So now you're out 2 spots.
Like literally more than half your team is that.
Correct. Yeah, 2 out of the 4 people on the team. And now you have Haley Van Lith, who is a college student still. And then you have Sierra Burdick, who has played international ball. Well, I suppose I say Ryan Howard's the vet. Maybe the WNBA vet, current WNBA vet. But Sierra played WNBA ball, so I should really give her credit. I know that she's playing international now. So she'll be still be that 30-year-old veteran on the team, but now who's going to fill the spots? And a lot of people could think, oh, this is perfect. This is how Caitlin Clark gets to be on the Olympic team.
No.
And no, there are rules to who's allowed to be on the team. And a major rule is that you have to have participated in 3-on-3 international basketball in recent time, or just have any time, I guess.
Okay.
Is what it seems. And then there's something about you have to rank top 10, 2 players top 10 and 2 players top 50. So it's not like you're just putting the 4 best players in. But I'm assuming our 2 top 10 players are probably Ryan and Cam. So,
at least Cam.
At least Cam. Well, yeah. I would say Ryan is probably better than Cam. So
okay, sure.
To me,
yeah.
There's that. So I'm going to just briefly go through the list of eligible players that were at the Springfield training camp.
Springfield.
Yeah, it was Springfield, Illinois.
Okay.
Could have been Springfield, Ohio. I don't know exactly where. It could have been every state is Springfield. Mm-hmm. Just because I grew up in a Springfield, every time I see Springfield, I'm like, oh, Springfield.
No,
it's not Springfield, Pennsylvania. Okay, so the other eligible replacement players, I guess, are Azana Baines, who I don't know, Christina Dulce, who I don't know, Blake Dietrich, Alicia Gray, who I would point out it feels like a pretty likely replacement considering she was teammates with Ryan Howard in Atlanta, and she has aura because she's got the rec specs. Oh, that's aura. That's aura. Google it. Alicia Gray has aura.
Okay.
Dira Kahambi, who we talked about.
For sure that she should be on the team.
Could be a very likely replacement for Cam, considering the position and the role that she kind of plays. Mm-hmm. Hey, it's Post John here. I bet you were just saying to yourself, but hey, I saw the news that Dira Kahambi has been announced as a member of the 3-on-3 team. Well, we were right. And so those are the most likely replacements, but other people that could be considered, Lanai Harper, Lexi Hull, Kelsey Mitchell, Lucy Olson, Katie Lou Samuelson, Madison Scott, Michaela Williams, and Camille Zimmerman. So, if we're looking at other W players in there, Kelsey Mitchell might make sense, to replace Ryan, a smaller shooter player, sure. Mm-hmm. But I think if you do Alicia Gray and Dira Kahambi to replace those 2, the team is not going to be as good.
Yeah.
But the team's still going to be very good.
I'm worried about their height.
Well, yeah. De'Erica's not quite as tall as Cam, but still tall.
Okay.
And Ryan Howard's not super tall anyway. Right. So I don't know what the comparison is between her and Alicia Gray, but I'm sure it's pretty online. So that could be the potential Olympic roster. Obviously, we're going to be continuing to talk about it as we get closer. But we're less than a month away, so it's time to make some decisions.
Gotta figure it out. Yeah.
So those are our 2 highest profile injuries of the week. But then there's a longer list of other players that got hurt.
Yeah, Elizabeth Williams, my girl.
Elizabeth Williams on the sky. Maddie Siegrist broke her finger. Lexi Brown is dealing with an injury in LA. It's just like starting to pile up, and it's unfortunate, and it's what happens because you're playing a lot of games. Mm-hmm. And this is the time of year where things go down. Hopefully nothing too catastrophic. There's still players working back from injury like Shakira Austin has missed 7 or 8 or 9 games in a row, despite playing a little bit early on in the season, and they're managing that injury. But
yeah, and Brittany Sykes,
who
was out for like 4 weeks, played 1 game, then got hurt again with a different injury. So that's rough.
It is rough.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's the biggest news of the week.
That's the news. Well, good news.
Other good news.
Is Chelsea Gray's back.
Chelsea Gray is back.
And I'll be the first to admit.
And I'll be the second to admit.
I'm like, is she really going to be like that good? Like everyone was saying, we can't wait for Chelsea Gray. Chelsea Gray is the best point guard in the world. I'm like, okay, I hear you. I don't know if I believe you.
Show it to me, Rachel.
But you're right. Chelsea Gray is incredible.
Oh, she's so cool. I'm like, wow. We watched her first game back. And already it's just like some sick behind the back passes from the top of the arc into the paint.
Sick.
Like just nasty stuff.
Like she's not even looking one bit. Just passes it right behind her in between defenders. It's a perfect pass.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm like,
on her the first play back, she had an assist and was her 1500th assist.
Yeah, 1500th assist for Chelsea Gray. 1,500 boards this week for Kia Stokes.
Oh.
So 2 1,500 milestones for the Aces.
Interesting.
But it's easy to see. And look, that the Aces beat the Sun this week. The Aces, they're kind of back.
They are
and
back.
It's like...
They are so exciting to watch.
And this is kind of what they want. They want to be the team that people think they can take advantage of.
Oh, yeah.
Because their teams are going to operate like, oh, well, you've already taken 6 losses on the year. You took 6 losses on the year without Chelsea playing in the lineup. And Asia continues to be Asia. Kristen's going to highlight Asia in a second. But like...
And she wasn't even starting yet. She didn't start either of the 2 games that she played in.
Correct. So. Soon she'll be back in the lineup full time, and it'll be scary hours for the league. I'm terrified. I'm absolutely terrified. But yes, let's talk about Asia Wilson because she has some news.
I want to talk about Asia. Well. We haven't talked about Asia, and she's on my fantasy team. Can you guess how many points she's averaging on my fantasy team? Fantasy points.
Well. No, fantasy points, she's probably averaging 48.
51.
Okay. Close.
Just so good. She has a 19 game streak of 20 points or more. In the Sun game this past weekend, she had 26 points and a career high 16 rebounds.
Career high 16.
And she would have gotten 20 if they let her play the last 3 minutes. They took her out because they were winning by so much. True. But I was like, she's going to get 20 rebounds.
Yeah, 2020 game is huge.
Yeah, but... But, so she's just amazing. Every single game, nobody can defend her.
Shocking. It's almost like she's
the best player.
It's almost like she's the best player.
She's my MVP.
Uh-huh.
But her Nike logo came out this week.
I didn't see this. Kristen, this was maybe half an hour before we started recording. She turned her phone to me while I was looking at something. And she's like, did you see the logo? And I said, no. And I didn't turn my head. And she said, good, I'm going to save it for the pod. So this is my live react.
Here it is.
Huh. What is it? Wow. It's like an X and a door. That's what it looks like to me. I like it. It's cool.
When I first saw it, I was like, what?
So what, that's going to be on the shoes?
I guess. It is. Okay, so this left side, look it up, listeners. The left side here is like a sparkle.
A sparkle.
But it makes an A.
Oh, I see it now.
You see the A. I think it should have been flipped. Like the sparkle should have been on the right side. Then you would have been able to tell more easily that it's an A.
Yes.
But it's an A.
I see it.
Yeah, I looked at it really for 20 minutes and I'm like, what the heck is this? But now you can't unsee it. So
again, not in a bad way. Cool for a logo, cool for a brand. It's cool that she gets that, because again, we talked about that shoe, that very lucrative shoe deal that she deserves, that she got, that she was hiding for over a year. Mm-hmm. It's cool to see that now we're in the early phases of development there. We've got the logo. I haven't seen the shoe yet. I don't know if there's a prototype. Mm-hmm. But yes, always good for Asia.
2 more things I'll just highlight. Caitlin Clark is tied for the fastest player to reach 100 career assists.
Okay.
Minus the game happening right now.
And the game that was we just were watching the Sky Fever game. She had 13 assists in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. 13.
Yeah, there you go.
And she's finding her shot, folks.
And then also Angel Reese, playing in this game, has 7 consecutive double-doubles, a record for double-doubles by a rookie.
A record of consecutives. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's see if Angel can break that, because Angel, Angel's having a good start to her season, continues to have a good start to her season, seeing real minutes, real play time against, the hearts of all these teams. And Chicago is going to be one of those teams like Atlanta, I mentioned before, that's going to be battling for that last spot in the playoffs. Do they want it? Do they want to...
battling for bottom 4, perhaps.
But true. It depends. Do they want it? Do they want to tank?
Yeah.
I should remember what I said about what the draft would look like with lottery replacements.
It's too confusing.
It's not confusing. It's just escaping me at the moment. But I think they're going to try to make the playoffs. Okay. I mean, I don't think Teaspoon is going to be a fan of trying to lose games. Like,
I love her. Every time they mic her up, she just doesn't answer their questions, just screams into the mic, because she's yelling at the players, but it's so funny.
No, she's great. She's great.
Yeah.
Another post, John. Just want to highlight the fact that Angel Reese, in the game that she played against the Indiana Fever while we were recording this podcast, put up 25, 16, and 1 and helped lead the Sky to an 88-87 win over the Fever in the last minute of the game. Certainly her best showing of the year. And the comment I said earlier about Caitlin Clark locking up Rookie of the Year might not be the case. So continue to bang that drum. So that'll pretty much do it for our opening segment of this week's show. Now we're going to take an opportunity to pass it over to our interview with Connecticut Sun fan Matthew Coach, and let's learn a little bit about what we got cooking in Connecticut. So now we're joined by fan of the podcast and Connecticut Sun aficionado and host of the Strictly Political podcast, a West Wing Rewatch. If you're interested in that, it's Matthew Coach Bryan. Matthew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Would have been doing a lot better if the Sun were able to, shoot some free throws yesterday, because I feel like that was quite a bit of the difference in the game yesterday, was all those missed free throws in the first half.
Yeah, it is tough to see when your team goes right around 500 at the line. That obviously doesn't bode well. But you had an opportunity to go to your game. It was your first WNBA game. Well, first off, before we get too deep into the game, you're a fan of the Connecticut Sun. Why don't you tell our listeners what part of the country you're in and why you're a Connecticut Sun fan?
Yeah, so I'm here in the outskirts of Portland, Oregon, and I've lived here my whole life. But I've been very, very loosely for a few years now a Connecticut Sun fan, and finally decided to dive in with your podcast here. But when I was in college, I had a Native American Studies minor, and for one of those classes, we studied the economics of casinos and other businesses that are run by Native Americans, and the professor was a member of the Mohegan tribe, and so we learned all about the sort of unique structure and history of the Sun. I thought that was really fascinating, and so I've been kind of a fan for a while, and then just getting in with this podcast, I think that they're sort of, for me, the perfect team in terms of how they play and stuff, that I just have definitely fallen in love with this team and the way that they're the way that they play together and they flow and stuff. It's just it's incredible basketball to watch. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really cool to hear that story and hear all the different reasons why people pick what team they're a fan of, especially with this W situation that there's not that many teams. We had Gilpy last week. His cat's named after Maya Moore, so he's a fan of the Lynx. And your story is very personal and a really interesting one. So that's really cool, and that somebody from the tribe. So I love that.
No, that's about as cool and makes as much sense as any other reason to root for a team. Mm-hmm. Portland, a city that has been rumored to potentially have an expansion team, that had one lined up and had one debunked, and now is potentially still on the docket. How does that play in? We usually ask this closer to the end, but just right off the top, because Connecticut's on the other side of the country. What would a Portland team mean for you, or you feel like you're just gonna commit to Connecticut because they're quite a good team?
Yeah, I think that there's no way I'm gonna be hating on a Portland team, but I think that it would be pretty tough for them to knock the Sun out of the number one spot there. I think that there's the number two spot. I love to rank every team in the league in terms of how much I like them. So the number two spot definitely up for grabs. Number one, I'm not so sure about that, but I do think Portland is a very, very logical choice for expansion. We have the best attended women's soccer team in the country, mm-hmm. and the only market that has both men's and women's soccer, where the women draw more fans to the games. So we got a history supporting women's sports here in this city, and have lots of basketball infrastructure here, obviously. So it makes a lot of sense, but I don't know. I don't think they could dethrone the Sun, at least for now. Maybe if they, they play a way that I like also, and the Sun, go away from playing the way that I like. Maybe, ships could pass there. But, sure. I love the Sun, and and the way that they play is just so awesome that it's, hard. It would be very, very hard, if not impossible, for me to ever root against them.
Yeah.
Sure. So you really did dive right into your Sun fandom. You bought jerseys, one jersey, right? You went to the game yesterday against Seattle, the Storm. How was the game? How was that experience?
Yeah, the game was a really awesome experience. I think that I was talking this to someone the other day about that. I think that the W is kind of in the perfect sweet spot now, where the games are popular enough that they're in these big arenas, but the tickets are still relatively cheap, right. And you can get good seats. So the seats that we had were on the bottom floor level, but all the way up in the last row, and those were only $25, and it's the best seats I've ever had for a basketball game, and probably also the cheapest I've ever paid for tickets to a basketball game. Right. So that was really awesome, and we were sitting right behind the backboard, and so which is a fun way to watch basketball. I think I always enjoy that. And the arena was, they had so at the arena there in Seattle, there are 3 levels, and so they had the third level was closed, and then there was probably 80 to 90% in the bottom 2 levels, and so it was still able to be a really loud, really fun environment. There, which is which is awesome, because I've been to some sporting events with dead crowds, and it's kind of boring and takes you out of it a little bit, but the crowd there was awesome, even though I only saw one other Sun fan in the entire arena when I was there. Right when I was coming in, it was funny because like the Sun would make a shot and I would clap, and then the Sun players on the bench would clap, but nobody else would make any sound. And it's like just me. But I think also like I talked about this a little bit when I was talking to you, that I think that like I do like that the fan culture of the W is not as toxic as some other sports things there. That I didn't meet anybody that called me names or threw things at me like when I go to Seahawks games.
That's good.
When I was like 10 years old going to a Seahawks game, people would throw things at me because I was wearing my Cardinals jersey. And here I am as a grown adult going to a Storm game, and didn't run into any fans that were mean about it. So I think that there's a lot more of a sense of community in that regard, which I think makes sense, right? That everyone's kind of involved in growing the game, and there's not as much toxicity, which is nice. Like I think I was telling this to you guys yesterday, that it's like I find it hard to really hate any of the teams, despite my best efforts to find a villain to root against.
Yeah, even as much as your distaste for the city of Seattle, you told us you can't really hate the Storm because you would like them if not for the fact that they're in Seattle. They would be like much higher on your rate. I mean, I've seen your ratings. I've seen where they rank. Not particularly great, but
no.
Yeah, I mean, they're a good team, and it's good to hear that the fan energy is good in that arena. Of course, I imagine from what we've seen of Sun games throughout the season in Connecticut at Mohegan Sun, their crowd is also very lively. So I'm sure it's a very similar or even a stronger energy considering the way that the team has started so far this season. So before we get into this being a tough week for the team, why don't we talk about that franchise record run that they went on to go 13-1 in their first 14. Like what were you seeing as a new fan that made you realize that like this team is one of the best 4 or 5 teams in the W? Like what sort of did it for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, so just obviously like as a relatively new fan, you're watching just like, oh, they win and they win again, so it's kind of like, oh wow. But I mean, I think that what you really notice, or what I really notice with this is just how well they play as a team. That like obviously like Alyssa Thomas is like the best player on the team, and then Deanna Bonner, but like everybody kind of plays all different positions, and that's what allows them to be like such a threat, which is like so great. Like especially they've done this a couple of times, but especially yesterday I really noticed it, that like Alyssa Thomas will do sort of like point forward where she'll take the ball down the court, and she draws all this defense on her, even though she has literally only ever made 1 3 in her entire career. But she draws this defense back because she's such a threat to pass, and that opens up all this for everybody else. And so it's just like the team is structured in a way. Like I think you talked about this with on the podcast about Carrington last week, about her like coming in and playing a totally new role on this team. Like everybody fits in a way that I don't think these players necessarily would be playing at the level they were if they were on a different team with a different structure, right? And I think that's really I've been impressed with Coach White and the way that she structures this team, because like a lot of times like the players will like be shooting, they'll be like wide open, and you sort of like look back and you're like, how did they get wide open, right? Like they're playing against this professional opposition, and it's just because they find a way to get people in threatening positions, and then that draws a double team and then opens up a really easy layup or whatever. And so that's like just like incredibly fun to watch, I think, in that regard, of that like they're constantly passing, and like Alyssa Thomas is like such a threat to score that she ends up with like 15 assists in a game or whatever, because they're doing the double team on her. She can pass, do crazy passes and stuff too, which like I imagine it would be incredibly frustrating to sort of defensive game plan around playing her, because you're like, okay, you got to like play up on her, but then you do that and she just like dishes a crazy pass, and you're like, well, how are you supposed to defend against some of those passes that she has?
Yeah, it was really interesting watching the Sun games this week, because I feel like, opposed to the Lynx who we watched last week, it is like the opposite of what the Lynx do. And just in terms of like the Lynx just shoot way more 3-pointers and play further back, and the Sun, we notice, play like really in the paint. They shoot layups constantly, and like they know they can make them, so go ahead, like it's working. But it was really interesting to see like how completely different that is, and I think from what I've seen, is a different style than a lot of the teams we've watched. And I guess why I was excited to watch the Seattle game yesterday, so I feel like Seattle is kind of also does that. That's kind of also Seattle's style, is more layups rather than the 3-pointers.
No, I was just going to say that I think that, a lot of what you see, the strategy that the Sun have is like, get to where you can have a shot that's like a high percentage shot. You don't see a lot of, missed shots, right? That a lot of the possessions that don't resort in scoring are because there's a turnover or, especially shot clock violations, is something that they've struggled with a little bit. But it's like, you could tell that they'd rather get a shot clock violation than like shoot up a wild 3 that ends up, leading to a fast break for the other team because it's an air ball or whatever, right? And I think that that's, really an interesting strategy that I kind of like. They play, like you said, in the paint, that they really have, 3 power forwards that they start with, which is like an interesting strategy that they, it's like, Alyssa Thomas is officially like a small forward, but like, she really doesn't play like a small forward. She plays much more in like a power forward, and that they don't really have a true center, so it's like, sort of this 3 power forward thing, which is like a unique strategy. And it's all around like, when you're going to shoot, it's going to be a high percentage shot. You're not going to be shooting some, contested 3. You're going to be, shooting a lot of, layups and a lot of uncontested layups, right? Because, you drew a double team on the other side of the court, which is like, obviously been successful, so far. So, can't complain too much.
Yeah, and so often, like, I feel like 3 or 4 or 5 times a game, like, AT will just, take it from behind the arc and go past every defender and just lay it right up like it's nothing, like it's nobody's business. And, you said it, she plays like a power forward, and you talked about, like, the defensively scheming against her. I feel like offensively scheming against her, that's like her bread and butter. Like she is on the whoever she's guarding, and she can guard 1 through 5, which my biggest compliment to the Sun is that they really show that they are the best defensive team in the league. And I know where that's, what that's doing to their early season success. They're also, like we said, they're making a lot of layups, which shows that their shooting percentage is, one of the better ones in the league. When we were digging into the team stats, I was kind of fascinated to find out that they're really not top 5 in many of the league's counting stats, like not top 5 in points or assists or rebounds. They really get it done by, this defensive mindset, preventing their other teams from scoring, making sure that they make their shots at a high clip, and sort of being good at protecting the ball, because one of the things that they are also top of the league in is preventing turning the ball over themselves. So they protect the ball, and they don't do a lot of, like you said, a lot of risky plays. They're not chucking. They're not making passes that they can't score off of. So it really makes for like an interesting, like slow but very deliberate offense. And that makes me wonder, because let's talk about this Aces game, because when they played the Aces, who have had early season struggles, the Aces came out and they kind of gave them fits. So, like, do you worry about what you saw in the Aces game? Do you worry that, like, their offense can't keep up with a team that has a really high caliber, like, Minnesota shooty, very fast-paced team, or do you feel like it was just kind of a fluky loss in Vegas?
No, I mean, I definitely think that that's going to be the concern with this team. Like I think I told you guys this, but I think that there are sort of, 5 teams that I feel like are really a threat to be, winning it all this year, which I have the Liberty, the Storm, the Lynx, the Aces, and then us. And I think that, when we're playing, especially the Aces and the Lynx, is that if they can control the pace of the game, like, it's going to be pretty hard for us to keep up, just because, like you said, like, if they're making threes and we're making twos, and everybody's making, like, they're going to pull ahead at some point there. I think this game was a little bit fluky, just in the defense struggled in ways they haven't in other games, and I think that a lot of that is, like you said, that the AT guards 1 through 5. One of the things that they've done really to great effect in a lot of this year is that they switch on every screen, whether it's, pick and roll on the ball or, off ball screens or whatever, because everybody plays defense against everybody. And I just think that they did not do that as well in the Aces game. And, and I think a part of that is obviously the Aces are very good and were able to sort of take advantage of some of that. But I think also it was just like an off game for defensive wise in that regard. And so I think it's like, I'm not worried like, oh, they're going to play the Aces in the playoffs and get swept because they can't guard them. I just think that it's like, you realize that, like, when you play a team like the Aces or the Lynx that are going to be good at 3, you need to just be a little bit more attacking on defense. And I think that was a struggle, right? And I think that, like, when we played the Lynx, whatever that was, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I forget exactly, where the 1 point game that we had against them, the like, at least to me watching the game, it appeared that the sort of switch at halftime was to just, like, jump out more on those threes, and it, was able to obviously help us, down the stretch of that game. And I think that that's just something that, you're going to need to focus on when they're playing these teams that can shoot the 3 really well, is just lock in that a little bit more on defense.
Yeah, something that I noticed, not to get too much into the Aces, but something that I noticed during that game was, like, at the beginning of the game, the Sun were really guarding Kelsey Plum. Like, they were all over her because she shoots a lot of threes. And that was working for a while. Really, the whole first quarter, the Sun were winning. And then I guess, the win started, the point difference, the Aces started pulling ahead. And then they kind of stopped, like, guarding the 3 as much, guarding Kelsey Plum. They weren't really guarding Alicia Clark, who was also shooting kind of open threes towards the end of the game. So I don't know. I mean, we can see that their defense typically has been very, very good. I hope it was kind of like a fluky situation. We'll see what keeps happening. They'll have more games against the Aces, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's not just one.
Yeah, towards the end of the season. So I am excited for those games. For the rest of the games they play against the Aces, the Liberty, the other games against the Storm. To kind of see, like, I feel like the Sun have had a relatively easier schedule leading up to now. So then the games that they play going forward against their peers, I would say, their peer teams, I think will be really fun and interesting games that we'll have to tune into.
Yeah, no, and I think also specifically in the Aces game, and I think also in the Storm game as well, that you saw that the game kind of got away from them a little bit, in that, like, once they're down by more than 7 or 8, it just becomes a lot harder to sort of do the strategy that the Sun want to do, which is, like, take 20 seconds off the shot clock and, to end up shooting a nice layup. It's like, well, if you're down and you're trying to come back, like, the strategy doesn't work as well. And so I think that, part of that obviously is, making those early game adjustments when they play these teams to not get down. But then also hopefully, Coach White is finding out, what the strategy is if you're going to be down. Because if you're going to be playing these good teams in playoff series, you're going to get down eventually, right? And you can't just write off every game you get down by 7 points, right? Which is, sort of been what, in the 3 games that they've lost this year, at least to me watching, it's felt like the game's sort of gotten out of hand at some point where you're like, yeah, there's, 5 minutes left in the game, but I don't feel like they're going to be able to come back at this, even though they're only down by, in theory, only a few shots, but it's just like they're just not really going to be shooting threes. And so, they can't, it'd be stupid to like switch up your strategy 100% and just like start chucking up threes, like that's not going to win us any games. But, that sort of is, what it feels like. And so I think that, finding out like how can they adjust is going to be a big deal because, in these last 2 games, it felt like, the game kind of felt over with like, 5 minutes left, even though it, mathematically wasn't, but it felt that way just because the Sun can't play from behind by more than, 4 or 5 points, and really just keep playing their strategy. So that'll be something to see as they switch, I'm really looking forward to, I think it's the 16th. It's the final game before the Olympic break when they play the Liberty. I think that'll be a big game to see, like, how have they adjusted and how have they, learned from their sort of past mistakes because, they've had, a lot of easy games and then they've had some hard games that they won and then obviously, 3 of these hard games that they've lost. And so, if they're going to be contending, which I think they, should be something they were looking for, it's like, okay, how can you be more consistent against the other teams that are also going to be, in the finals and the
right. Yeah, and even when we go back to that Seattle game, the announcer, it was a Seattle announcer, but they noted that in the clutch, which the WNBA defines the clutch time as 5-point margin within 5 minutes to go near the end of the game, there was this was a clutch game. So for the Storm and for the Sun, who are both really good clutch teams, Sun 6-1 and the Storm were 5-1. It's difficult for the Sun being the team that's playing from behind in that case because the Storm are so good at closing out these close games, and the Sun are obviously good at closing out these games when they're in the lead. So
and at home, of
course. So I don't doubt that they can figure out how to play from behind at the end of close games and figure out how to win. I do feel like just looking at the way that they use their roster, they don't go particularly deep. I think we only saw 8 players this entire week between the 3 games that we watched.
Well, they were closer games.
They were closer games, and their starting 5 is really good. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if they could add one strong perimeter shooter, at the trade deadline, like somebody to, and I don't know if you're going to take Ty Harris out of the starting spot, but like if Ty Harris was coming off the bench, then that might be, a different look for the team because she's the primary perimeter threat. And I don't feel like they have many other, like DeWanna Bonner can shoot occasionally, but it's not, her game.
Yeah, and I think also with Bonner, the sort of interesting thing is that they had her out, trying to shoot a little bit at the end of the game. And I think that not only is she not like a, elite 3-point shooter, it's that also like when she's out there, like the defense doesn't feel the need to guard her particularly closely. Whereas if she gets in the paint, she almost always draws a double team if she gets the ball. Whereas it's like, it's like the very, very loose defense if she's out at the 3 because she's not like an elite 3-point shooter. Obviously she's, reasonably good, better than her fiance who hasn't, even attempted one since 2014. But it's like not only is she doing something that's like, it's like when she's in the paint, even if she's just standing there, she's drawing a lot more defensive attention than she is with the ball, in the corner 3 position. So it's like, I think that, having somebody who can shoot as a threat to shoot, I think would definitely be what sort of needed to take this team to the next level. And obviously I think they're, good enough to potentially win this year. But it's like if they had somebody who was the sort of, 6th or 7th person on the team who could like really shoot threes at a high level, that would be, game changing to this. And one thing, they did get 10 people in, including 2 people that played the last 30 seconds of the Storm game. But yes, only 8 people played actual minutes. But yes, number 9 and number 10 came in with 30 seconds left in the game yesterday.
Okay, so
gotcha. I don't even have 9. I don't know who 9 is. I don't have her written down.
We missed them, but it wasn't. Unfortunately, it wasn't. My former favorite Connecticut Sun player, Queen Egbo.
Yes.
Who we've talked about this. I made the mistake early on in thinking that Queen Egbo was a very good player, and she played like 1 minute with the Sun, and then she got cut. So that was just me not realizing that Queen Egbo, unfortunately, was not the player that I thought she was. Mm-hmm. She's no longer with the team. And I was hoping that we'd have an opportunity to talk about her.
Yeah, she was a very good college player that has not fully adapted to the W necessarily. But I mean, mostly the problem that she had on being on this Sun roster is that she was the second center on a team where the first center averages like 4 minutes a game. So, that was never a sustainable roster spot, I don't think. Like I said, we play really with 3 forwards, and our center never really plays. She's one of the people. She got in with 34 seconds left yesterday against the Storm. So having a second center never really made a whole lot of sense to me. But.
Well, and with the way that Bree Jones is playing, she is the one that is even. I would say even the most efficient of their 3 power forward starting lineup. You'll look and it'll be the end of the first quarter and she can have 11 points. She can have 13 points just because AT is drawing up these plays for her to score extremely efficiently. So, yes, they are a good team, and we will not overreact to a tough 2-game skid because they're going to go into next week and they're going to get right back on the horse and win games and try to hold on to that position near the top of the league. So yeah. Well, I mean, with that also, right? That it's like you sort of obviously you're not happy about it, but I think you expect to lose on the road against the other top teams, and yes, it's not fun that the schedule had road games against 2 of the other top 5 teams back to back, but it's like if you're being sort of completely objectively honest, it's like, it's impossible to go undefeated in basketball, right? And so it's like, the games you want to be losing are road games against the other top teams if you're going to have to lose games. And so it's like, that's been their losses so far. And so, can't really complain too much, even though it sucks that they were back to back just in terms of the, vibes going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Yeah. And I think just 2 players that I wanted to also highlight. Going back to Dwana Bonner, I think she is sneaky under the radar, I feel like, in these games. A lot of the time I'm not really paying attention to her because she's not handling the ball so much. I'm paying attention to Alyssa Thomas or Brianna Jones. But then when she starts turning it on, I don't know, when they start running plays through her, I'm like, oh, they get on a run.
Mm-hmm. It happened in that Seattle game.
It happened in the Seattle game. It happened. I feel like she wasn't doing much at the beginning of the Aces game. And then in the 3rd quarter, she was like, okay, I'm in it. Mm-hmm. And then they weren't, they didn't start to win, but they got on a little run and they got a little hot. Mm-hmm. So she's sneaky. I mean, she's not sneaky. People know she's really good, but sneaky, she's under the radar player.
Right. The number 5 scorer all time.
Yeah, but you don't see it and you're like, wow, okay. And then also Dejanay Carrington, I think she brings a really unique energy to the team because a lot of the other players are bigger, slower, but she doesn't care. She's running around. Yeah. She'll foul somebody. She'll get in your face and try to steal and block from you. And she brings the energy I think that they need sometimes. Yeah. So I really appreciate her.
She's the young gun. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing to have.
No, absolutely. And I think that Carrington's a big part of their defense because, she's there to run in, to sort of add to some of these double teams or to, run up on somebody and stuff that it's like I don't think that the team would be nearly as good on defense if she wasn't sort of the motor behind that. And I think that, that's sort of the fun thing, right? Is that she came in, she wasn't really starting last year, but it's like, the sort of, the product here I think is better than the sort of some of the parts that you would imagine, right? That you take the Sun defense without her is, obviously still good, but not like nearly the best in the league. And then her on her own before she came to the Sun was, nothing special. But then you add it together and it really, creates a special defense, which I like. And I think that, everybody seems to be kind of, the perfect fit for this team, right? Which is like, great. And I think that shows, really great personnel building. And, obviously, this being the second year since Coach White was brought in. And I think that you see all those decisions seem to be made to sort of tailor around the fact that, new GM and new coach. And now this year is sort of like, they had a year to sort of test. And now this is sort of the year of the product, I think, in a lot of ways of just like, here is, everybody is playing a role that fits them really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also Mariah Jefferson was a big trade for them in the off season. She's barely played this year because she's been hurt.
Right.
So once she starts playing, what are they going to look like?
That's true.
That will be good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's the Sun. So, but before we ask the question, that we like to ask our guests about how you would, convince somebody to become a Sun fan. Do you have any greater takes about the team or about the league at large? I know you have some interesting statistics that you'd like to discuss, but the floor's open if you have something outside of that.
Yeah, no, we can dive into my statistical analysis that I did. This is in response to I don't know, a few weeks ago that Kristen brought up that she feels like there are fewer assists in the WNBA as it compared to other sort of basketball. And so I wanted to see, how true is that and see if I could understand maybe some of the reasons why. And the answer is that over the last 5 years, there are slightly fewer assists per made shot. So in the NBA, they average over the last 5 seasons. They average 42.2 field goals made a game and 26.7 assists per game, which is basically that there is 1.58 shots made per every assist. And then in the W, they average 30.1 field goals a game and 19.8 assists per game, which is 1.52. So just slightly less, but I think still significantly less. And what I have determined here is that, so obviously the numbers lower because games are lower scoring, both because they're shorter and also they actually just score less per minute. And a lot of that is also that there are the reason that there is slightly less comes down to the fact that there are more plays in WNBA games that are where players sort of do it all themselves. And so obviously whether it's them taking a rebound and going all the way, or they get a pass but they dribble and stuff, and that it's basically that even if there's a pass that comes, if there's a certain amount of time and movement, then it doesn't count as an assist. And I think you see a lot more of that in the W, and I think that really is what makes up the difference there. So, there is a statistically significant difference, and I think it just comes down to the play style, which is that you're a lot more likely to see, players in the W take a pass and then go all the way and, dribble past a bunch of people than you are necessarily in the NBA, which I think is just it's like a size issue, right? That the players are smaller, which allows there to be openings that you can get around, right? Whereas if you're playing against some, 7 foot, 300-pound guy, it's hard to kind of run around him, no matter how fast you are.
Yeah, very true. Huh. Yeah, interesting.
This makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm constantly, Chris and I are constantly talking about why are these numbers lower? Why are these numbers lower? And a lot of the time it just goes back to there is less time in a game. Asia Wilson's not scoring 30 points per game because she only has 40 minutes to do it. Not that she would play all 40 minutes, but the numbers
basically plays 40 minutes.
Well, different cases, and so on certain things. It's not to say about everything, but yeah, that's some interesting stuff. I'm glad you glad you dug into that in response to.
No, I was gonna say I think also with the like games being shorter, like the shot clock is the same length, right? And so it's like there are just definitely fewer possessions, and I think especially you see a lot of teams in the W will take a lot of that shot clock off, which is good strategy for them, right? But it's like there just are only so many possessions in a game that's only 40 minutes if you're taking 15-20 seconds every time you go down the court.
Right.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so Coach, you've got your you've got your team. You love your team. Why should a new viewer of the WNBA who does not have a team, why should they sign up to be Connecticut Sun fans?
Yeah, well, I think that there are a few reasons. One, the reason that I got in of just like, their team background. I think it's really cool that they're a team that's owned by a Native American tribe. There's a, cool part there, right? That their success doesn't, money they make doesn't go, to some billionaire. It goes to, a tribe and a group of people that, benefit from that, right? And which is, a cool thing there. Also with that, they're sort of unique in that they're really, the only professional sports team from their area, which is kind of cool. And there's a, unique community around that. Obviously there are people that come in that are fans, but like a lot of the like local fans, it's like that this is like the one team that's sort of in their area. So that's a cool opportunity to sort of be a part of that. And, you don't have to sign on to the baggage of maybe being, that ties with some other things, right? If you become like a Lynx fan, right? You're tied into, all those, almost all those Lynx fans are also Timberwolves fans, so there's a, so some clash there, right? That you have to buy in, no buy-in with that. But then, with this team specifically, I think that they're a fun team that really, is built around everybody playing their own unique role, which is awesome, right? That they, yes, AT is very good, and so is DeWanna Bonner, but like they don't really have any huge star, right? Like nobody on this team is likely to get MVP votes, but they're still going to play together really well, and they're going to get players that come in that maybe were coming off the bench, like Carrington, right? She was I think 6th or 7th option on her team last year, and now is coming in and is starting and making a difference. And I think that at least to me, that's like, a fun team to get behind, right? That it's like, yeah, any team with any strategy can win if you have the best players in the world, right? But to win with a bunch of players that, are playing above their level, like that's awesome and that's fun. And I think that, Coach White's going to be here for a long time, and, this entire structure is going to be here. So it's like, you can imagine that, even as the players come out, this team is going to, sort of set up for success in the long term. So, get in now, and then when they, win 5 championships in the next, 8 years, you gotten in on the ground floor.
I love that. Okay, I have 2 things as my closing thoughts.
Go.
Well, first, I definitely like a Connecticut team because I grew up in Connecticut. We talked about that at the beginning of this. But they're like a little bit embracing the New England vibe. At the beginning of this week, they were very congratulatory to the Boston Celtics. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that.
Difficult for Philadelphia.
But I can forgive them. And then the other interesting fact storyline that I kind of went into a rabbit hole today that was interesting to me. So last year, Brianna Stewart was the MVP. And in my mind, I was like, okay, it was probably between like Brianna Stewart and A'ja Wilson. Well, I realized today, I learned that Alyssa Thomas actually had the most first place votes last year for MVP, more than Brianna Stewart. And I was like, I'd be pissed. But it's just that like Brianna Stewart had way more second place votes.
Yeah.
And AT had more third place. So how the, numbers added up, Brianna ended up winning. But like I kind of had been hearing throughout this year, AT's like on her revenge tour. And I don't know why, but that's why. Like, I'd be pissed if I got the most first place votes as MVP and I didn't win it.
Right. Well, and it makes you wonder why I thought she was a former MVP. She wasn't a former MVP, but she's been very close.
Right. Very close. Yeah. So she is still playing like mostly at the same pace as last year. But Asia, I think, is just playing like way better than last year. So I don't know if it's like a convo right now, but I hope that she can have some justice eventually for that.
Plenty of games to play.
I think the interesting thing also with this season with the break, right, is that like how does momentum and stuff carry in across that, right? I mean, there's so much fixture congestion right now, and then there's going to be a big break, obviously for the people going to the Olympics, like they're going to still be playing, but for the people that aren't, like, how does all that affect? I think it'll be a really interesting second half of this season that is almost going to kind of be like 2 seasons in some way, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and that's makes for a fascinating situation. Like you don't see that in the NBA. There's not a break like that.
A month? No.
It'll be something to see, and we've still got 24 games to play. So the Sun could just as easily go on another 10 win streak later on in the season, and I wouldn't be shocked to see. So, Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to give you the opportunity to fill in about your show if you'd like to discuss that real quick before we are done here.
Yeah, if you thought, hey, this guy knows a lot about basketball, but what does he know about politics and TV? You can find that out. I got a Strictly Political. It's a podcast with me and my good friend Mason, and we talk about the show The West Wing, really mostly through a lens of modern politics and tying the stories into what's going on today. And we have a very, very special guest this week. John's going to be on to be my anger counselor as we watch my second least favorite episode of the show that makes me very mad.
Oh, great.
Yes, it'll be an interesting role that I'll get to play. But as somebody who hasn't watched a ton of West Wing but has watched his share of West Wing in AP government, I'm excited to dig into it and talk with you guys. So you can listen to me on that show as well. It'll be out sometime coming up next week. So
Friday, yes, it'll be out on Friday.
Friday, there you go. But anyway, thank you again so much for joining us, Coach. It was lovely to talk Sun. We'll have to have you on again, maybe in the playoff time when we're learning about who they're going to get matched up against. But until then, continue to enjoy your Connecticut team that is playing good basketball.
No, it's should be a fun upcoming week. With two another easy run in the schedule. So hopefully get some joy back by winning by a lot. Hopefully.
For sure.
The AT Revenge Tour is back.
Yeah. This week. Cool.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right.
So now we're back from our interview with Matthew. Tough week for the Sun.
Yeah.
Tough week to be Sun fans, unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe we cursed them.
You think we cursed them?
No. Well, we'll have to see if we cursed them or not.
Yeah, I think like we talked about, it is a learning experience because the team was so good for so long. But now the schedule gets a little tougher. They play some of these opponents that they had yet to play. And I fully expect Connecticut, who's well coached, veteran presence team, to figure it out and fix the things that are, hurting after this week. Maybe go make a big move in the trade market. I feel like I can see that. I know we talked about it.
They need it.
They do need it. But we want the top 5 or 6 teams to be as competitive as possible because it makes it much more exciting down the road. So here's hoping that Connecticut can figure it out and get back on the track that they were on at the beginning of the year before this week. But that'll basically do it for this episode of the show. Looking forward to next week. We have a discussion with our friend Matt another Matt, to talk about the Liberty, who on Tuesday are in the Commissioner's Cup. So make sure you check out the Commissioner's Cup match against the Lynx. And we'll see how that's going to go. So look forward to that. And again, if you want to send us an email, don't forget, attackthebaseline@gmail.com. Kristen, do you have anything before we do the thing that we always do?
No, I'm good.
No, you're looking at it?
Mm-hmm.
Then what are you going to do?
I'm attacking the baseline.
That's right. I am attacking the baseline. Mm-hmm. And we'll be back next week.
My energy is Noelle, what's her name? The Storm coach.
Noelle Quinn?
Noelle Quinn. That's my energy.
How you attack the baseline is Noelle Quinn.
Yeah.
Yeah, go check out Noelle Quinn if you don't know Noelle Quinn. She's the chillest coach in the W. So that'll do it for our show. We'll be back next week. As always, we love you. Thank you for listening. And go attack the baseline.
Bye.
Bye.